I am Dr. Patrice Berry, licensed psychologist, and here I share educational videos on a variety of topics. And I was in the Grizzlies live earlier today, and I just saw the first 3 minutes of Lori Vallow's statement, and y'all get ready. I would like to start with just a portion of her defense attorney's statement and then get into her statement and then the judge's sentencing. And I'll just play some clips from this. The full video from Law and Crime will be linked down below. But this entire case has just been very, very difficult to watch. I did do a video. Let me share that. I have it linked down below on religious trauma. And hey Ray, I know you can watch us both. So I'm going to cover a little bit of the defense's side, and then I am going to get to Lori's statement. That was the part that just had me we have to talk about it. And then I'm also going to share some information about delusional disorder. I I haven't been following this because some of this has been mostly audio and I struggle with just listen. I need to watch and hear. I struggle with just watching. I'm sorry, with just listening. And so and I've talked with y'all before. I have a processing issue where sometimes I might say things wrong accidentally. Please kindly correct me in the comments. I do not mind that. When people do it in a mean way, that's when I just delete it. But let's hop in to this part.
Thomas, you can proceed. The court prefer if I stand, or is it okay for me to sit, given the acoustics in the room? I think it'd probably be better if you remain seated to pick up the recording on the record. Very good, Your Honor. Thank you. Your Honor, some 20 years ago, I was sworn into the bar and took a sacred oath to uphold the Constitution. And part of upholding that Constitution is making sure that the state meets their burden on criminal cases.
Okay, so as people are coming in, please know, so I am going to cover her diagnoses. The judge actually gave her diagnosis in his sentencing portion. And her most recent eval, I think the report was dated for February, I believe the judge said. And so I will be sharing about her diagnoses. And I think that her attorney's statement, so this statement that her attorney is giving, I think this really played into some of her narcissistic features, I think, because he's going to talk about how great she is and how she just needs hope. Like this part is pretty frustrating to listen to, knowing what she's charged with, what she's been found guilty of and everything.
They're required to prove beyond a reasonable doubt every aspect of the case. And I used to be a prosecutor back in the day, 20 years ago. I understand the burden and I understand the weight that they carry. I enjoyed the job, but it was a bit of a commute. And after a couple of years, I found a job that was closer to home, gave me a little more opportunity to be with my family. And so I took the job, but I was going to be a job as a public defender. And it was hard. I was torn because people would come to me and they would say, you know, how can you do that? How can you represent people that are charged with such horrible and terrible things? And so
I could not be a judge. Okay. So I am way too now in session with clients, because it's only 45 minutes to an hour. If I'm doing a longer assessment, it might be about 3 hours. But this judge has had to listen to this has been such a long process. He is doing a phenomenal job just listening. And I agree. I think I don't know why he's including this part in his statement at all.
went to my wife, one of my best and greatest counselors.
Okay, we're going to fast forward
And I
a
said,
little bit.
what do you think of all this?
I just can't.
She's kind, she's loving, she's caring, she's very witty.
Now he's talking about Lori.
She's insightful, she's smart. And if you talk to people that knew her prior to 2018, prior to this whole crazy series of events, you'll hear about a wonderful person who was active in her church, who was active in her community, who loved her children, very active in their lives. You'll hear people who talk about how great she was with their children in her church, in her church callings, in her neighborhood. She was a great mother to her kids. Her son, Colby, in fact, testified at trial that she was a great mother when he was growing up. She has redeeming values.
Exactly.
Kay Woodcock sang her praises today, that Lori was a great mom and that Kay allowed JJ.
And so the attorney goes on and on to be like, she needs hope, like this is JJ and Tylee, and like that you can't bring them back, and Tammy, that their lives have ended, and almost like her life shouldn't end as well, and she should have some hope. She should be a model prisoner. He goes on and on to talk about all of this. I think he probably, I don't know this for sure, I would think that he recommended that she not give a statement, because I'm about to skip forward to get to her statement. And if the judge wasn't already thinking to impose the maximum once she gave her statement, yes, I think he was definitely like, there's no way she can ever be out in regular society again. And I believe her state doesn't have not guilty by reason of insanity. And that would have been difficult with delusional disorder. That would have been difficult to even prove. Um, let me just see where this is.
Others in the future.
Okay, I'm gonna rewind. All right, there we go. All right. So this next part, please prepare, okay? Do all your breathing. Please, this next part is infuriating. Like, it is just extremely difficult to listen to. I think it does go to her current state of mind. And I think this is why the judge is going to impose the maximum sentence. I think they took the death penalty off the table at some point. Like I said, I haven't followed every second of this. I'm going to pause it after this part because I just can't. I just can't. And Ray, I think she always put herself first, because if she has certain personality features, those were likely present throughout her entire life. There's also a trigger warning. I'm going to try to catch it, but she says that Tylee was essayed by her biological father, which I don't even know that this is true, from the age of 3 for I think 10 years or something, which I don't even know if any of that is true. And if it is, that should not be brought. I don't think she should have brought that up at this time. Once again, it all goes to her protecting herself and putting her interests first. But let's keep going.
To run concurrent with each one of the other charges.
So the defense attorney asked for 20 years, and he just wanted her to serve 20 years and to be eligible for parole around the time she's 70.
We can do this, Judge. We can move forward towards peace again and heal, which is what we really need to do. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you for the recommendations, Mr. Thomas. All right, Ms. Vallow, before I impose sentence, if you choose, you may address the court. This is known as the right of allocution, which permits you to make a statement on your.
Okay, so I was in the Grizzlies live when this part was playing, and I honestly thought she was not going to speak. But then I did say in the comments, I was like, if she does speak, it's going to be all about her, or it's going to be her to put on a performance or some type of show. That's the only reason why I thought she would give a statement. Once again, I really think the attorney probably recommended, especially if he saw her statement. Now, as a individual that's in her position, she has the right to say exactly what she said. Like she can do that. I think it hurts her case with the judge. She does not come off looking contrite or apologetic or remorseful. None of that comes across in this statement, and we will watch it.
Your own behalf or present any information in mitigation of the punishment for the crimes you've committed. And let me inquire at this time, do you wish to address this court? All right, very well. You may make your statement.
I'm getting
I would like to
myself ready.
start by quoting John from the New Testament in the Bible. In John chapter 8, verse 7, Jesus says, "He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her."
So, y'all might not know, so I am a Christian. I'm a pretty liberal Christian, and that scripture is not to say somebody that so I do try to have a non-judgmental stance. But being non-judgmental doesn't mean that the person doesn't have consequences. So it doesn't mean that just that not casting stones. It's almost like she would, to me, what I got from what she said was, y'all are acting like y'all don't do anything wrong either. Like, who are you to judge me? God judges me. And you don't have any authority over the ability to judge me, which goes along with her delusional disorder, I think, and then also the narcissism and her histrionic features. Like, I was just I the judge did try his best to control his faces throughout all of this. That had to be incredibly difficult. There were certain times that you could see his emotions shining through in big ways. Yes.
Then in verse 15, Jesus says, "Ye judge after the flesh. I judge no man. And yet if I judge, my judgment is true." Jesus knows me, and Jesus understands me. I mourn with all of you who mourn my children and Tammy.
Okay. So, warning again, she's going to continue to call Tammy her friend. So despite the fact that when Tammy was alive, she was out planning her wedding to Chad and all of this stuff, like, she's gonna call Tammy friend multiple times. And uh y'all, I'm so glad I got to watch this with y'all. My husband, he doesn't watch this kind of stuff. So like some things happen and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to go talk about this. Because it helps it just get out. Like, this was wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Jesus Christ knows the truth of what happened here. Jesus Christ knows that no one was murdered in this case. Accidental deaths happen. Suicides happen. Fatal side effects from medications happen. I have a different perspective in life because in 2002, when I was pregnant with Tylee, I died in the hospital while in labor with her. They tried to stop my labor.
You saw the judge take a deep breath right there, because it's about to get. So I do believe people can have out of body experiences, but I don't think those out of body experiences should encourage them to do crimes. That because how she forms this entire thing, it really gets muddled into things that are not commonly held by any religious group that I'm aware of. And so that is where we look at religious delusions, because this next part is going to get very, very difficult to listen to.
They put me on the table and they put something in my IV, and I felt my spirit falling to the floor. I was standing near my pregnant body, watching the doctors try to revive me, which took them a few minutes. In that time, my sister Stacy was standing to my left. I turned to hug her and was surprised that her spirit was as tangible as a physical body, because I knew I was in spirit and she was in spirit. She said she needed to show me some things, and
Y'all, this is going to be difficult to listen to, so I'm going to address some things in the chat while we do. So, Munchausen's by proxy is where the doctors diagnose a medical condition in the child, but there's speculation that the parent might be making them sick, or that the parent might be going to multiple different doctors and doing all of these things. Sometimes they are actually giving them something that makes them sick because they're trying to get attention from not the parent. The parent is trying to get attention from the medical doctors. I have worked with an individual that was diagnosed with this condition. And once the children were out of care, out of the individual's care, all of their medical, or 90% of the medical, went away. There might have been some things, but the normally in these cases, children will be on a long list of medications. They'll have a long list of medical problems. But then once they come out of the individual's care, all those medical attention, all those medical things go away. And so, because she's going to bring up Tylee's pancreatitis or something. She's going to bring up a medical condition and the fact that Tylee was supposedly in pain. And there is some speculation. I don't know if she was or not, but there is some speculation about that. So let's keep going.
and we went to heaven. I later returned to my body. Because of this experience, I have access to heaven and the spirit world. Since then, I have had many communications from people now living in heaven, including my children, Tylee Ashlyn and Joshua Jackson, my sisters, Stacy and Lolly, my aunts and my uncles, and my grandparents. I have had many communications with Jesus Christ, the Savior of this world, and our heavenly parents. I have had many angelic visitors have come and communicated with me and even manifested themselves to me. Because of these communications, I know for a fact that my children are happy and busy in the spirit world.
So I am somebody that is a spiritual person. I would never, what? Like, what? What? And I've worked with people that have lost children, that have lost children in accidents, or have had various different things happen that were not by their own hands or conspiracy by them. And just to hear her say that, that was just, to me, it's almost justifying what she did. Like, this is how she sleeps at night. This is how she justifies herself. I remember the judge in the Alec Murdaugh trial that said that uh what's her name? Maggie and the son, that they visit him at night, and he tried to make it seem like, oh yeah, it's positive. It's a comforting visit, because the judge was kind of saying they haunt you. They likely haunt you at night. For her to go and make these types of statements. And as a psychologist, so there is a diagnosis. And y'all let me know in the chat if you want for me to talk about delusional disorder now or wait until she's done. Because I can either do it now or we can wait. We can get through the whole thing and then we can talk about her diagnoses. But this was very, very difficult. Very, very difficult to watch. We will keep going for now.
Because of my communications with my friend Tammy Daybell, I know that she is also very happy and extremely busy. I have always mourned the loss of my loved ones, and I have lost many in this mortal world. However, I know them more than most people. I know where they are now, and what they're doing. I know how wonderful heaven is, and I'm homesick for it every single day. I know we all lived in heaven before we were born on earth, and we were all adult spirits in the heavenly realm. We chose to come to earth as mortals. Heaven is more wonderful than you can possibly imagine. I do not fear death, but I look forward to it. I did not want to return to my body when I was out of it. Even though my son Colby, who I adored more than anything, was only 6 years old at the time, and I was about to give birth to this new baby girl that I wanted so badly. I was a young mother, and you would think I wouldn't want to leave my children, but as I stood in heaven, I did not want to go back. I thought they would be fine without me because I was peaceful and I was happy and I was home.
Ugh. That just, once again, I think it goes along with how she truly thinks. And if I was her lawyer, because to me, this, in my mind, if I was the judge, it would mean that she could do this again if she thought the person would be better off in heaven, and that she's the one that gets to make these decisions. She puts it in her hands and she decides people's fates.
But then I was told by Jesus that I needed to go back and complete things that I had covenanted or promised to do before I was born. This caused me a lot of distress because I knew heaven was my real home, and I only wanted to be there. I was free from pain, emotional and physical. But then I was shown how I would help my children and others in the future. So ultimately, I did agree to go back to my body. Kylie has visited me. She is happy and very busy. Kylie is free now from all the pains of her life. Kylie suffered horrible physical pain her whole life. I sat with Kylie in the hospital year after year after year while she screamed in pain when the morphine wasn't even enough to take away the pain of her pancreatitis. I sat there while she cried and I held back her hair while she threw up. And I am the
And once again, this is making it about her. Because if you notice how she said it, this is all about her. And we are, please keep, that's why I made this part big, because the judge, and he writes when she says something that he wants to remember. I don't know, I wish I could see what he wrote on the piece of paper, but um wow. Wow.
only person on this earth who knows how much Kylie suffered in her life. She had pain every single day. She never felt good. Her body did not work right. And I don't know if that was from complications from me dying while she was being born or something else, but she had a very difficult life. She was sexually abused by her own biological father since she was 3 years old, and she was forced by family court to go visit him for 10 years against her will. I fought for her in court. I protected her. I tried to protect her with my whole life. I tried to protect her. I worried about her every single day. Kylie had to get her GED because she couldn't go to school every day because she never felt good. She felt sick. Nobody knows this because Kylie, like myself, tries to put on a good front, tries to be a happy person.
And if you notice, she'll relate a lot, that when she's talking about somebody that she appreciates, she relates it back to them being like her and having qualities that she has, which I think goes into some of the narcissistic features.
Tries to have hope in life, tries to know that she's here for a purpose and that she has an eternal purpose to be on this earth. But I never stopped worrying about her. One of the times that Kylie came to me as a spirit after she died, she commanded me, and she said to me, "Stop worrying, Mom. We are fine." She knows how I worry and how I miss her.
The fact that she thinks the child that she played a role in unaliving, that she comes back to comfort her. What? Oh, wow.
The first time JJ visited me after he passed away, he put his arm around me and he said to me, "You didn't do anything wrong, Mom. I love you. And I know you loved me every minute of my life." JJ, Joshua Jackson, was an adult spirit. And he was very, very tall when he put his arm around me. He is busy. He is engaged. He has jobs that he does there, and he is happy where he is. His life was short, but JJ's life was meaningful. JJ was a wonderful person and touched the lives of everyone, and I adored him every minute of his life. My eternal friend, Tammy Daybell, has visited me on several occasions. She came to bring me peace and comfort, and I know that she is extremely busy helping her family, especially her children and grandchildren. And I have a great love for Tammy. My beautiful children, Tylee Ashlyn and Joshua Jackson, rest safely this day in the arms of Jesus. My wonderful friend, Tammy Daybell, rests safely this day in the arms of Jesus. And I look forward to the day when we are all reunited and I too will rest with them in the arms of my Jesus.
All right, Ms. Vallow, thank you for your comments to the court. Let me ask you at this time, Ms. Vallow, are you fully satisfied with the representation you've received from your attorneys throughout this case?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I will save, because the judge makes a lot of really great points. So I will save the analysis of the delusional disorder for the end of this part, because I think the judge's statements are really, really powerful. And I normally, so before getting into doing videos like this, I didn't always watch sentencing. I think the Murdaugh trial was the first one that I ever streamed. And along the way, I really think, because these judges, they sit through everything and they see everything, and they're taking notes along the way. And this is the first time they really get to speak and say their piece. And so I did appreciate what the judge shared.
All right, the court will conclude then with my own review of the matter and then pronounce sentence. Ms. Vallow, based on the jury's verdict of guilty in this case, it is the judgment of this court that you're guilty of the following counts of the amended indictment. Count 1, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan and grand theft by deception. Count 2, first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan. Count 3, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow and grand theft by deception. Count 4, first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow. Count 5, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell. And count 7, grand theft. We've carefully reviewed the record of this case, beginning with your prior criminal history. Very notably, you're 50 years old. These are the first criminal convictions you've ever had. I will note, however, in addition to these convictions, you have 2 additional conspiracy to commit first-degree murder cases pending in Arizona. And it's somewhat incredible in this case that seeing you've gone from no criminal history in your life to now having been convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and you continue to face more additional counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in another state. I've looked at the recommendations in the pre-sentence investigation report. It ultimately recommends a prison sentence stating, quote, incarceration under the custody of the Idaho Board of Correction. Normally, the court would have some additional information to rely on in fashioning its sentence, including the benefit of recommendations based on a gain evaluation, substance abuse report, mental health review, and other reports. However, you elected not to cooperate with the pre-sentence investigation. As I would note on page 23 of the pre-sentence investigation report, it states, quote,
I'm thinking she was probably upset that she was found guilty. I wonder if that happened after the guilty verdict, if that was when she refused to cooperate with any of this, and she instead focused on making her statement and thinking, "Oh, this will make the judge feel sorry for me." She has been able to talk her way out of so much, and I agree. Like, I think she should have been charged when she had all the stuff with her the husband that, murdered, like, when he was like, "She's trying to harm me, and she's trying to harm our children." Like, and instead, the police I watched that interrogation where they believed that she was just this victim, that she who what could she do? Who could she harm? Why is he afraid of her? Why does is he making her seem like she's all this and that? And now we know, wow, like he was onto something, and he was right. And the judge, I really respect the fact that he did try to, like, that he stayed impartial through all of this, and he'll make some statements about that. We'll keep going.
Lori Vallow Daybell intends to remain silent during the pre-sentence investigation process. She has the packet, but does not intend to answer any questions of evaluators or investigators. Quote, no attempts were made to complete the court-ordered screenings due to her refusal. I'm advising you that that was your choice to not cooperate in the pre-sentence investigation, but it left me without some additional information that potentially could have been mitigating in your case. And as I proceed with the sentencing, I'll note those deficiencies in the information I normally would have in a pre-sentence investigation report. As has been mentioned by both sides here, the court has to consider certain sentencing objectives when I sentence somebody, and these are set out in cases including State versus Hill, which is a Court of Appeals case 103 Idaho 565, and it's been adopted by our Supreme Court as well. And I have to consider for main objectives, number one, the protection of society, which is the primary objective. 2, deterrence of the individual and public generally. 3, possibility of rehabilitation. And 4, punishment or retribution for wrongdoing. That case states, moreover, it's clear as a matter of policy in Idaho, the primary consideration is the good order and protection of society. All other factors must be subservient to that end. I've also reviewed and considered the criteria set forth in an Idaho statute 1925-21 on the question of whether or not you should be confined to prison and to what extent. That statute sets out a variety of factors I have to consider in weighing whether a long prison term here would be appropriate. Some of the attorneys cited already to some of the provisions of that statute, and again, it talks about the primary consideration of the protection of society, and also talks about the impact on the victim, the possibility of risk reduction through rehabilitation, and deterrence are also to be considered. There are some factors laid out in that statute that are not necessarily controlling, but weigh in favor against either imprisonment, or in this case where imprisonment's required, an extensive imprisonment term. Some of those factors under Part 2 of this statute is the defendant's criminal conduct neither caused nor threatened harm, which is clearly not the case here. that the defendant did not contemplate the conduct would cause or threaten harm. Again, that would not apply here. The defendant's criminogenic needs indicate the defendant will benefit from supervision and treatment in the community. That's unavailable, as community treatment can't occur with a minimum prison sentence required here. Another factor, were there substantial grounds tending to excuse or justify the defendant's criminal conduct, though failing to establish a defense? I don't find those apply given the facts of this case. Other factors, the victim of the defendant's
There was an important Angel made a really important thing. So there are people that are Latter-day Saints that are LDS that don't have these types of beliefs. Because the cult part was what her and Chad kind of believed with the zombies and that kind of weird. They kind of branched off from their traditional kind of church beliefs and all of that into this very isolated group where they just kind of answered to each other and they weren't checking in with other well-known religious leaders or any, like, they believe these things and they just kind of stayed together with that. And it was a very small kind of isolated group because even I watched some of the documentaries, the Keep Sweet. Oh, that's there's a lot of trigger warnings in that one. And then also the one about the Duggars. I watched both of those because we talk about religious trauma. And I linked a video that I did about religious trauma and adoption and some of the things that I've seen in that. That was the first time that I talked about this case at all. But it was very, very strange. I think she thought she saved. I don't know, like her views were just all very, very strange, and that she knew better. And Oy. And I also think there was a financial motive as well. That was what the prosecution really focused on. We will keep going.
criminal conduct induced or facilitated the commission of the crime. That did not occur here.
Oh,
Another part talks about compensation, which I don't find would be appropriate here other than on the grand theft charge.
okay. So I don't know if this is true, but I love it. So y'all do a good job talking about stuff. So but Sarah says that the judge was a part of the LDS community, and I think having a judge that understands the faith, they can kind of help. Now, just because two people say they're Christian doesn't mean that they both believe exactly the same thing, but at least if we're within a similar tradition, that we can kind of know, okay, wait a minute, that's way outside of what anybody within this faith, this is way outside of what people believe. I'm not a fan of some of their like discipline stuff, the obedience, the focus on blind obedience and some of those things. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of purity culture, especially what it pushes on girls to like do their best to not like make their brothers. I don't know, like it's a lot is put on girls in that. But anytime, I think true faith heals, but then toxic faith or there is something that's not, that ends up hurting. And I don't see that within a traditional religious setting. But yeah, we'll keep going. Those are just my thoughts.
Part G, the defendant has no history of prior delinquency or criminal activity or has led a law-abiding life for a substantial period of time before the commission of the present crime. That is the single most mitigating factor I see in this case. Again, it's unbelievable that at your age you have no prior criminal history and now you sit here convicted of the most serious of charges. I also have to consider whether the criminal conduct was the result of circumstances unlikely to recur. Based on the evidence in this case, and in particular, considering the statement you just made to the court, I find it weighs against me finding in mitigation for that factor.
Exactly.
And then finally, the character and attitudes of the defendant indicate the commission of another crime is unlikely or the defendant demonstrates amenability to treatment. So those are the mitigating factors. Then
I want to address something else in the comments. And it does seem like she really, but her beliefs are so self-centered. So I think even Murdaugh might have thought he was saving Paul from, like, jail, or that he was saving Maggie from when people have and so narcissism is a spectrum, and just because somebody has certain traits, I will always say it every time I talk about mental health and law and mental health and crime. Most people with mental health conditions, they are a greater risk to themselves, and they're a great risk to possibly be a victim of a crime than to actually do crimes. But in this particular case, it does seem I think she believed that whole zombie thing, but it was weird how she picked who was zombies and who wasn't. It seemed to have self-serving qualities, things that she already believed and that she already thought. And we will keep going.
In aggravation, we have more factors to consider. Is there an undue risk that during the period of a suspended sentence or probation, the defendant would commit another crime harmful to another person? Would a lesser sentence depreciate the seriousness of the defendant's crime? Will imprisonment provide appropriate punishment and deterrent to the defendant? Will imprisonment provide an appropriate deterrent for other persons in the community? And a factor that would not apply here is the defendant a multiple offender or professional criminal. I don't have an LSI score, which is one value I can look at to help determine whether or not you'd be likely to reoffend. I don't have that because you wouldn't cooperate with the report.
So, in talking about kind of Lori, I I feel I don't know for sure. It seemed like the kids got in the way of her love for I like her and Chad. Ugh. Um the kids might still be alive if she hadn't connected with Chad. I don't know. I think she would still have some very odd, very strange, but I think that thing between her and Chad, and I think that's why she likely didn't allow her attorneys to really present anything about him as being any possible because I don't think she presented a defense. Because I don't think she presented anything for the defense at all. And so it was just very, very strange, very odd. When hearing that she had because I thought it was mostly Chad until I heard that I think he came to her to see if somebody was light or dark. And she said that I think I don't know, like she ended up making the final decision, which yeah, that's that really changed that I had a little less because before it was like, oh, could she have possibly been bamboozled or like did she get caught up with a guy and then with her delusions, did she get led astray and was she manipulated? It does not seem that way at all. It seems like I think Chad was using her for her money. Chad did not because his wife was the one that had the better job. I think he made something he did not make a lot a year. And I truly think, oh, and I don't want to think about that, Sarah. Sarah, I don't even want to think about that. I'm gonna keep going.
So considering here that you've lived a law-abiding life and for a long time, you were obviously a good mother, sister, daughter, and friend to many people. I have to take that into account. You've served a very long time of local jail, over 1,200 days, and the report is you've been a great inmate, never caused a problem for anyone in the jail. And you should be commended for that. And that also shows that you are capable of that. I believe your counsel when they tell me you're an intelligent person. Up until all these events began to transpire, you've achieved goals in your life, you've done important things in your life. And I'd note that despite some of the comments here today, I have found that during my interactions with you throughout this long case, including your trial, you've been respectful of the court.
I don't like beeping.
Do we know what this beeping is that keeps going off?
I would have stopped too. Please make the beeping
Sorry.
stop.
All right, the court
Possibly.
will next consider, and I think it must be considered in mitigation. That you do have mental health issues. I've dealt with those throughout the context of this case where there were commitment proceedings. I've reviewed those reports and have that personal information from having gone through the determinations of whether or not you were competent or fit to stand trial. The most current diagnosis the court has is from Dr. Watson, and from February of this year states you suffer from, and I'll quote, delusional disorder, mixed type with bizarre content and hyper-religiosity, continuous and unspecified personality disorder with histrionic and narcissistic features. So obviously a very complex diagnosis that's been made here. Whether or not that can or how it would be treated, I think by all accounts is unknown at this time. I've reviewed your personal history, including statements from your own immediate family members, and it's clear that something radically changed in you that led you to where you are today. In a statement made in the pre-sentence investigation report, your mother stated it perhaps best and said that you are not now, quote, the person she knew. The record in this case, including all the evidence I observed during the jury trial, indicates that if it wasn't already occurring, that this relationship with the co-defendant seemed to be a catalyst for the change. At this point, I'll note that I will not be making comments on any other co-defendants in this case, as your co-defendant is currently presumed innocent and awaiting trial. In sum, there are significant mitigating factors the court has to consider here when I consider you and your life as a whole, and that does make the case difficult. Typically, when I see somebody to be sentenced and they don't have a prior criminal history, they're given opportunities to first prove themselves on probation or avoid a lengthy term of incarceration. However, of course, some crimes are so serious that even with mitigation, there is no other reasonable option except for a prison term and a long prison term. And sadly, you've been convicted of and have committed the most serious crimes possible, and those crimes also require an equally serious punishment. So this is the part where I will consider what I think are the factors in aggravation. I went through those factors in the statute that I look at, and as I'll explain, I find that 5 of those factors weigh against you and in favor of a lengthy period of imprisonment. First, the case itself. I'll discuss that. There was a lot of pretrial litigation in the case. You decided to take your case to a jury trial. I will state and emphasize that I firmly believe it's the right of every person in our country to exercise their right to a jury trial, and they're afforded the full due process of the law. It's been somewhat disheartening to me to realize that there are many people who think that they can predetermine a case and somebody shouldn't be afforded their full rights of due process before they are convicted of a crime. Well, I didn't make all of the rules that govern criminal cases, but I took an oath to uphold the rules that are there, and I make every effort to ensure that people's due process is protected, because that's an important duty of mine. Everyone has a right to be presumed innocent, and everyone in a criminal case does have a right to a jury trial. Sometimes I feel like maybe too many cases settle, and there should be more trials because it's a right people are entitled to exercise. You exercise that right, and I in no way hold it against you that you just.
And it was interesting that the judge said this, because on another stream I did recently, we were talking about how there are some people that are caught like in the act or right after. We know, like, we pretty much know exactly what happened, but they're still going to get a trial. And this judge really wanted to talk about the fact that this is a constitutional right. This is something that people get to do, and that he wasn't holding that against her or thinking that they wasted time or anything like that.
Decided to have your case determined by a jury. That's your right, and it does not impact or influence my decision in sentencing. Before trial, I did not delve into all of the evidence or facts of this case and only address those when necessary to make rulings on motions, because I wanted to keep objective through the proceedings and remain impartial. You were afforded all of your due process in this case, and ultimately, after presentation of the evidence, a jury did find you guilty on all counts. I bring that up now because when there is a trial, I learn and see all of the facts along with the jurors. And that's a different scenario than when someone enters a plea and I'm only allowing argument in a sentencing and not sitting through the evidence as I did here. Having considered all of the evidence that I saw at trial along with the jurors, it's been a difficult task for me to narrow down and articulate all of the aggravating factors because really there are so many here. Murder is the most serious offense. And the most unimaginable type of murder is to have a mother murdering her own children. And that's exactly what you did. You were involved in and guilty of conspiring to murder another group of children's mother, Tammy Daybell, who had children of her own. And despite the jury convicting you with overwhelming evidence, you still sit here before the court today and said you didn't do it.
Yeah.
You came here to East Idaho, where I've spent my life, and moved here from another place already with plans in progress to make your children disappear. The evidence bore that out at trial. You removed your children from their home in Arizona, alienated them from friends and family, got rid of JJ's service dog. You moved to Rexburg, a community where you could find 1,000 random families to take your children, and you brought them here to murder them. You had so many other options.
This is where you see a lot of emotion from the judge, and I think for this to happen in his backyard, in his county, a place that he loves, and like, because this ended up putting, I had never heard of this part of Idaho, but now I know it because of this crime. I remember seeing pictures, I think from the motel they were at or something, like all of these things, all the media attention and everything that she brought to this poor small community, and it was just all a self-serving purpose. And so we'll keep going.
You could have gotten divorced. You could have found someone to take care of those kids.
Oh,
Feel the rush.
Heard about
Right
this.
down to your DNA. Jurassic.
But as the state was able to prove at trial, you chose the most evil and destructive path possible. You killed those children, according to the state's theory, and I believe it, to remove them as obstacles and to profit financially. You justified all of this by going down a bizarre religious rabbit hole, and clearly you are still down there. While you were enjoying your new life in Hawaii, countless law enforcement officers, family members, and volunteers were searching for your children. And I don't think to this day you have any remorse for the effort and heartache you caused for others who looked for your children when you knew where they were and knew they were dead.
Yep.
They were found dead, burned, mutilated, and dismembered, and buried like animals. After you knew they were dead, you collected public funded assistance payments meant for them, and that was blood money you kept for yourself. And that's the grand theft charge you've been convicted of. Your sister, your son talked to you, begged with you while you were in the jail during phone calls I heard at trial. And those were very sad and difficult calls to hear. And you didn't provide any assistance or comfort to them. During the trial, when the evidence came out about how these children were found in the state they were in, you wanted to be excused and not have to watch the evidence, and were fine to let all the other people in the courtroom, including the jurors, have to bear through that. However, I ruled that you did have to sit and watch and see the result of your heinous crimes. The jurors in your case fulfilled their duty admirably. All 18 jurors we had, because we had alternates, went through the entire trial and faithfully fulfilled all their obligations and all the instructions. So we were able to get impartial jurors who weren't already tainted by pretrial publicity to decide your case. And I do thank the jurors publicly for the service they rendered. Those jurors I noted during the trial were very good at keeping their emotions in check and keeping stone-faced, as they're supposed to do, and be objective until the case is done and submitted. However, I did note at certain times during the trial, such as when there were videos and pictures shown of you in Hawaii at this time frame when JJ and Tylee were lying in shallow graves, the disgust on the faces of those jurors was evident, and shocking revelations about what happened here just kept coming through the trial. The crime scene was a horrific thing to have to review, and there's images that I will never get out of my mind. And I'm just looking at the pictures. Law enforcement officers who had to deal with the aftermath of what you did, I'm sure were traumatized. And I know it was traumatic as well for the jurors who had to sit through and see the photographs of these dead and mutilated and buried children. For those people who loved and cared about JJ and Tylee and Tammy Daybell, to have to see those photographs of them through trial of their dead and desecrated bodies must have been devastating. Tammy Daybell was murdered as a result of your conspiracy. She was, by all accounts, a healthy, happy mother and wife through a lot of her life. And you were out shopping for wedding rings to marry her husband while she was still alive. You were planning a wedding to her husband while she was still alive. You haven't shown any remorse for any of those actions. And she ended up being murdered, buried, had to be disinterred later so an autopsy could be performed in order to prove the evidence of what you had done. She didn't deserve any of that. You took her life away. You destroyed that family, fractured it to the point where, in the information I've had through the PSI, there are relationships that will probably never be mended that have rippled as a result of what's happened. JJ and Tylee, of course, 7 years old, 16 years old, were separate people whose lives were cut way too short because of you. Never got to grow up and be adults. The family and friends who have provided their impact statements, of course, have stated it better than I could about who they were. And it is a loss for everyone that you took them away from this world. And it is the most shocking thing, really, I can imagine, is that a mother killed her own children and you simply have no remorse for it. Even sitting here today, there's no remorse.
And it looks like he had already prepared this statement. So it doesn't seem like what she said changed his mind, but it likely made him even stronger in his conviction for what he's going to sentence her for in just a moment. Because and people are mentioning the fact that she keeps sinking down. So I am not a body language expert. So I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and with clinical psychology, so I never learned to like sometimes you can read some things from body language because I watch the behavior analyst or something. Like there are some popular ones on YouTube. I watch them break down analysis, but that isn't something that I'm trained to really speak on. I use testing, I use my observation, I use some of those things. Now I would notice that when positive things are being said about her, she looks very alert, she looks very amused, she looks bored and like and he is putting her in her place in a way that she's likely not used to, and she probably doesn't like what he's saying, and that might be some of the shrinking back and some of that she's doing, but we'll keep going.
For what you did. After all of this evidence through trial, you haven't shown any remorse. You haven't said you're sorry. You haven't done anything to seek leniency from this court. There's been a lot of people during trial and here who explained the devastation you're responsible for, and you've forever altered the lives, not in a good way, for many, many people, destroying family relationships, taking people away that were loved, cared for, and needed. You may not believe to this day that you've done anything wrong, and you still may think you're justified by your religious beliefs for what happened here. I'm not here to judge that, but I don't believe that any God in any religion would want to have this happen, what happened here.
I'm glad that he said that because of all the religious themes and how she's claiming everything that she's claiming. I was glad that he said that.
And your crimes are heinous and egregious, and that alone can constitute a major aggravating factor that requires me to impose a serious length of incarceration. So after weighing all those factors, I need to an aggravation. I find that the sentences I'm about to impose will serve the interest of justice by, number one, preventing you from ever doing this again, that they will not depreciate the seriousness of your crimes, will punish you appropriately, and will serve to deter both you and others. So
All right. So for the sentencing portion, what he does is he sentences her to the life in prison for each one separately, because he's like, these are three individual people. They didn't all happen in one incident. It was 3 different days, or there are years in between, I think a few of them. But and then he with no possibility of parole. So that was what she ended up doing. That's what he ended up doing. And she also has like a 25,000 court fine. She had another $1,000 court fine, and then she had 22,000 plus dollars of restitution that she'll have to pay. And so, yes, okay. So I did watch Dr. G's video on a different case, and I found it really helpful. And I guess he did a video talking about her body language in court. So please go watch that if you want a video talking about body language. Like I said, that isn't my area of expertise. I did want to share about delusional disorder because this is where a person can't tell what's real and what's imagined. There are many different types, including persecutory, jealous, and grandiose. And it can be treatable with psychotherapy and medication. For her, she seems to hold on to the delusions, and even with being charged with crimes and all of these things that she's had happen, I still don't think I don't think she feels she's done anything wrong. And this article is also going to talk about the difference between delusional disorder and schizophrenia, because schizophrenia is another disorder that has some psychosis, but it plays out a little bit different. Delusional disorder is a type of psychotic disorder. The main symptom is the presence of one or more delusions. A delusion is an unshakable belief in something that's untrue. So I think she truly believes in that whole zombie thing. And the belief isn't a part of the person's culture or subculture, and almost everyone else knows the belief to be false. People with delusional disorder often experience non bizarre delusions as well. Non bizarre delusions involve situations that could possibly occur in real life, such as being followed, deceived, or loved from a distance. These delusions usually involve the misinterpretation of perceptions or experiences. Now, the one thing we do say is to not overdiagnose this in marginalized groups. So, an individual like a Black male that talks about being followed around stores. Well, we know from lived experience that certain individuals are more likely to be followed around stores than others. Or if a woman talks about being passed over for a job because they found out that she was pregnant, like that would necessarily be a delusion. That is something that is somebody's lived experience, and those are things that actually happen. And so that's where people have to be careful that there isn't bias in their interpretation of what's real and what's not. And is this truly a delusion? And so the ones so this first one is where they believe that some famous person is in love with them. Individuals with the erotomanic, yes, that one, that they can sometimes become stalkers. Sometimes it can get dangerous if because the person might really think that they are in a relationship with this celebrity or with this other person. This is why on my channel I don't really put my child's face or anything, or because social media can get weird. People can feel like they have they call it parasocial relationships. People can feel closer to you than they really are. The things people share on social media are the things that they're comfortable sharing, and everyone's life has a lot more going on. Now, when I say like I adore Emily D. Baker, and sometimes I'll be in the chat and she'll, highlight my comment. I was in Natalie's chat earlier, Natalie Lawyer Chick. I was in the Grizzlies chat, and but I don't have personal relationships with any of these individuals. And so sometimes Natalie, so sometimes we did collaborate on one live. And I have reached out to see if we could collaborate in the future. If that ever happens, I will share that link so that y'all can join, because that'll most likely be on her stream. But there can be these grandiose beliefs, this overinflated sense of self, power, knowledge, or identity. And this might be hard to parse out from some of the narcissistic personality traits versus a grandiose delusion. And that's people believe they have a great talent or have made an important discovery. Jealous. This is the type of delusional disorder where the person believes that their spouse is being unfaithful. Persecutory. People with this type of delusional disorder believe someone or something is mistreating, spying, or attempting to harm them. This type of delusional disorder may make repeated complaints to legal authorities. Somatic, that individuals can have this delusional disorder that they are ill, but there's no medical thing that goes along with it. There can be a lot of gaslighting in the medical community. And so I'm always careful with whether, because sometimes somebody might have a legit physical complaint, a physical concern that they're having difficulty locating, but there is a type of delusion that is somatic, and then mixed. And so it looks like the psychologist diagnosed her with a mixed one. And I'm thinking it was probably the grandiose, maybe. I wonder if they thought the somatic one with her. So Munchausen by proxy, that's not in the DSM, I don't believe. I'm almost positive. I know because the child is the victim. They're the one Munchausen, and then Munchausen by proxy. I'm almost positive Munchausen isn't in. Could be wrong, but I don't believe it's in the DSM. And so sometimes the individual is diagnosed with something else. The difference between delusional disorder and schizophrenia. And so schizophrenia comes on a spectrum that also includes disorganized speech or behavior, and then also some like affect, some lack of emotional expression, some negative symptoms as well. And so delusional disorder, the only psychotic symptom is those delusions. They don't have any other psychotic features. This was interesting to me, that the average age of onset for delusional disorder is about 40 years old. And so that it is common for this to come up later. And so the average age, so for some people it could be younger, for some people it could be older, but the average age of onset is 40. And people who tend to be socially isolated might be more likely to develop delusional disorder. And this is according to the Cleveland Clinic. Let me see. All right. The most common type of delusional disorder is the persecutory type. And so Let me know if you all found that interesting. The interesting part I thought was that the average age of onset was 40. Aw, I'm glad you were there, Amanda, for that collaboration. I was really glad to get to do there. Fictitious disorder. I believe so. So I always have to look in the DSM to make sure. So I don't have it's a huge book that has a lot of different stuff in it. I don't have the whole thing memorized. But yes, let me just make sure. Oh, the media was reporting she had schizoaffective disorder. I was really surprised to see delusional disorder was her diagnosis. Same. Maybe a previous person diagnosed her with schizoaffective because they might have thought that I could see her possibly being diagnosed with a bipolar disorder, but it would be hard to determine the mania from her histrionic features because she puts on a show. So like when people come in, I think she wants that attention, and actors can sometimes have some histrionic type features. But so people can have symptoms of something and it not impair their functioning. So there are some actors that have been diagnosed with things like histrionic personality disorder, but they have that need for attention. It went beyond just being on camera. It turned into like a lot of extra things that cause them problems in their personal life, in their work life, all of that. I think a good example is Amber Heard. I do believe the phenomenal Dr. Curry diagnosed her with histrionic features. I think there might have been some borderline features as well. That was what she was diagnosed with. Yes, we were thinking about the same person. That her need for attention, because I heard that I think was it L'Oreal just dropped her or something? Dr. Curry. So I wish that I knew how to stream like this. When she was doing her testimony, I was watching Emily D. Baker's channel and just loving every second. I live in Virginia, and so Dr. Spiegel, I believe he still works in the Virginia Beach area. People were like yes, and so a lot happened after his testimony, but yes, yes, yes. All right, and so let's see. Do y'all have any last questions for me? If not, so at the end of the night, I like to just like watch Netflix or like I normally just chill at the end of the night. I put my child, so I have a almost 6-year-old, and I like to put him down. I am going to Harvard soon for a mental health creator summit. I will share some clips and I'll probably do a long video. I might have an opportunity to interview a professor on a particular topic while I'm there, and I will definitely stream all those things if all because I think I do get to interview somebody, so we'll see. And I'm connecting with a friend that's a social worker. She's the one that I'm going to bring on my channel to talk about back to school and preparing kids for back to school and how they can handle bullying. Somebody also requested a video on supporting parents supporting trans youth, and the individual has a trans child and they would like me to cover that. And so I will have a video. I think I have it scheduled to record it next week. I'm a little leery to let that one go live because I think the comments could be interesting. And so I just want to monitor that a little bit. And so I'm going to pre-record that and I might release that as a premiere. We will see. But I'm super excited. They are paying for the trip to Harvard. And so all expenses, the airport, the hotel, food, and transportation. And so I am super excited. I'm one of 25 creators that were selected for the program. And I think only 10 or 15 of us are actually going for the in-person event. And the creators range in size from maybe a few thousand followers to millions of followers. And based on the quality of our content, we were invited to this. and they shared with us some tips and tools for thanks. They shared some tips and tools for us. I am super duper excited. I'm gonna buy a Harvard sweatshirt. I'm probably gonna buy a shirt. I am a Virginia Tech Hokie through and through. I also went for graduate school. I paid for it, but like I don't own any merch from my graduate school. I only support Virginia Tech. And it really is going to be a great time to network. I'm going to get to collaborate with some other mental health creators that I follow and I've never got to meet in person. And so I am super, super excited about that. But I am hoping that y'all enjoy the rest of your evening. I hope y'all have a good one. Bye.